You are listening to Fantha Tracks.
Because of the following special program, Wonder Woman and the Incredible Hulk will not be presented this evening.
It's time to get all your Star Wars news in a single file. This is Making Tracks. Here are your hosts, Mark Newbold and Mark Mulcaster.
That's not true. That's impossible.
Right, sons, and welcome to episode 88 of Making Tracks, brought to you by the fine folk over at fanfortracks.com. My name's Mark, I am one of your co-hosts, and this week I am joined by a man whose previous Star Wars Celebration hosting duties have included Wishful Drinking, a Alcohol Anonymous panel with Carrie Fisher, Mints and Magic with Anthony Daniels, and of course, Tall Stories, Memoirs from a Set with Warwick Davis, Mike Edwards, and Kenny Baker. I am, of course, talking about Mr. Mark Newbold. Mark, how are you doing?
You know, I didn't know I got around so much, but apparently I do.
Yes. Those are all memorable panels that at least were the highlight of my Star Wars celebrations in the past.
How can they not be?
Yes, indeed, yes. I'm surprised that even Anthony Daniels let you share the stage with him, to be fair. So
I wouldn't share the stage with me. It's a dangerous path that you don't want to go down.
Indeed, yes. You're overshadowed by your sheer height and girth.
And it's me thinking you were going to say charisma.
Well, yeah,
oh, well.
and that, yeah, of course. How are you doing, buddy? How's your week in Star Wars been?
It's been a busy one this week. It's been loads of stuff has come into the house. Disney, obviously, we've got May the 4th coming up, which we'll talk about in a bit. And Disney sent out a care package.
Nice.
So there's all sorts of stuff in it. There was like some really nifty May the 4th bag. There was like the new Clone Wars character encyclopedia, a couple of Funko Pops, Star Wars talisman, a couple of notebooks, the Mission Fleet X-Wing, which is really nice. And then Greater Good came, a signed copy, which I think you've got that as well, haven't you?
The postman's got it. It's at the depot. I was out yesterday, so I missed it. It'll be collected, I think, on Tuesday morning, hopefully. So I'm looking forward to getting that. Yeah,
it's a good day to get it.
Absolutely.
And of course, 30th anniversary of Heir to the Empire, so this is all very well timed.
Yes.
What about you, mate?
Well, I actually went out shopping into the brave world yesterday, went to Milton Keynes and picked up a few Funkos, which was quite fun. But I think the big, most notable delivery this week was my life-size 1-to-1 Hot Toys Baby Yoda.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he turned up and I opened a box, kind of set them all up, and the hasn't stopped talking or eating since.
Oh, I can well believe it.
So that arrived and he looks amazing. He's great. It was a little bit of a nervous wait because I'd seen the Sideshow one and that looked really good. And for once I had gone with Hot Toys because I don't tend to buy many Hot Toys. I seem to have brought more Sideshow collectibles over the years than Hot Toys. And I was like, you know what? Although there's kind of a legacy connection to the Sideshow one because it was actually crafted by Legacy FX as such, there's something about the Hot Toys one, and I was a bit worried because basically the ears come off, so you can kind of interchange the ears, and at least from a prototype, it looked like there's too obvious a line where the ears connected to his head. But actually, when you get it, it kind of just looks like a wrinkle. You know, it's kind of like in with the folds of skin, so it doesn't feel or look like, that's where the joint is. He's cool when he's got the little gear knob, greebly thing that he nicks from Razor Crest. He's got his Mando Mythos Skull necklace thing as well, and like I said, you can kind of pose him. He's really poseable actually, and can open his little mouth, and so you can make him look a little bit cute or a little bit more serious and stuff. So yeah, he's at the moment, unfortunately, I've done the unthinkable thing and literally put him in the corner. So I've put baby in the corner.
Oh,
I know,
dude.
But for the time being, I'm kind of channeling my kind of student years. I've just put a pair of aviators on him. He looks a bit cool. So, but apart from that, and like I said, speaking of May the 4th, what's your plans? You got much on? What are you doing? How are you celebrating it? Do you celebrate it, more importantly?
I do. I think you've got to get into the spirit of it because we all know May 25th is really Star Wars Day. May the 4th is the gimmick Star Wars holiday because, May the 4th. But I think you've got to buy into that to a certain extent and go with it because obviously all the licensees do it, the general public do it. So it's the day to have fun with it, I guess. For me, it'll be watching Bad Batch again and just being online and chatting to folks and just seeing what's going on. Obviously, you got all the great deals. StarWars.com have listed a whole load.
Yeah.
stay tuned to Fantha Tracks. As this episode comes out, it is May the 4th. So check Fantha Tracks today because we'll have some other deals coming on from various places. I mean, social media, we talk about it all the time. It's such a cesspit. So you'd like to think that on May the 4th, people will actually have a bit of fun with this and enjoy it. That's my hopes. What about you?
I think so. I think the first thing I'm going to do is swing by the Disney store online and pick up May the 4th key and pin. Is that what you got in your Disney Care package? Did you get the key and the pin?
No, it didn't. It didn't come in there, sadly. No, I don't actually think that's out until May the 4th. I think that's the big thing, yeah.
And I tell you what, because I saw it on social media, I found it quite funny that they even had to put a little disclaimer saying, if you return the items, you have to return the key. You get the key for free if you spend over £20. So it's not, to be fair, a huge amount. There's quite a bit on the Disney store that you could easily find a couple of things for 20 quid. You know, you're not going to be too kind of upset with, receiving. So I wonder if, like, maybe last year they had a lot of issues with returns and people kind of returning the item but keeping the key and stuff like that. But other than that, I don't really know. I started watching the other day whilst I was at work, so I kind of had it on more in the background. The Empire of Dreams kind of feature documentary. So I'm going to finish that up. And of course, I'm going to watch Bad Batch once, if not twice, I think. So hopefully we'll be able to talk about that and we can have a little bit of a review kind of episode next week, I guess. So.
Oh, totally. Yeah, definitely. We'll have 2 to talk about because the second episode's out on Friday on the 7th. Yes. So we'll have 2 episodes. So next week, it might be a longer show because I think for the next few weeks, we'll be tucking into Bad Batch.
Hi, this is Vanessa Marshall, and you're listening to Fantha Tracks.
Have you ever done a Disney cruise or have you ever been cruising at all?
That's a very open question, Mark. I've been on a cruise. I've done it once. Ruth has been on a few. She did Caribbean cruises years ago. I've just done a Mediterranean cruise.
Yeah.
So a few years ago, I won a quiz show. We won a bit of money and we used it to book one holiday and then go off on a cruise. And we did this Med cruise, which was lovely. But I've never done a Disney cruise. Now, Carl Bayliss, our colleague over at Desert Planet Discs, I know he's done a Disney cruise and really enjoyed it. But it is something I want to do. And of course, you're going to talk now about Hyperspace Lounge, which looks incredible.
Yeah, no, it absolutely does. So this is a adults only, which I think is great, for Star Wars, because and especially for Disney, because I guess the problem is on a cruise and that there's probably quite a lot you've got to do for the kids, and there's probably a lot focused on the kids. But having an adults only over 18 or 21, I guess, bar for the cruise is just a great idea. And the photos they've released looks absolutely amazing. It kind of looks like it could actually come straight out of Solo. I think it's very much like a Dryden Voss type vibe about it. There's lots of gold, at least in the kind of concept artwork, but it's meant to be fully immersive, so I'm guessing that means that there's going to be the staff and the bar staff and that are going to be talking to you like they do from Galaxy's Edge, which is great, and possibly some kind of, Imperial presence might turn up at some point. It's kind of like a Canto Bight meets Dryden Voss vibe, and it's going to be on 1 or 2 cruise ships, Matt?
I think initially it's just on the Disney Wish, which is the big new boat they've got, which looking into it, I think basically sort of rolls around from Florida around the Caribbean and back.
Yeah.
If it goes down well, they'll expand it and move it onto other ships. I mean, I love the fact that in the day, kids can go in, but then there's like a break-off point where, like, grown-ups now, kids can go to the creche.
Exactly.
Or whatever. It's a big boat. But it looks amazing. And I like the fact that, you've got somewhere like Ogre's Cantina, which a Galaxy's Edge, which is like rough and ready and sort of that sort of Tatooine Naboo style that Batua's got. You go here, which, like you've just said exactly right, it's like Dryden's yacht, isn't it? It looks really classy. And I mean, they're doing unique drinks in there. There's stuff that they're doing that other locations haven't got. So you'll be able to buy drinks here that you can't get at Galaxy's Edge. And I dread to think how much this would cost. I mean, I can only imagine how much. And of course, for us in the UK, it's not like they're, if they were doing a cruise around Britain for 5 days at a reasonable price, you think, maybe give that a go. And you're not getting the weather, of course, but, you're getting the experience. But this, of course, you've got to get all the way over to Florida for us to have a sniff at this.
Yeah.
But it does look incredible.
Well, that's the thing, because my mum's a big kind of heavy cruiser, shall we say. She loves a good cruise. But she was saying, me and the other half should consider doing a cruise. And I did look at this, and I think actually it's like a 7-day cruise. Because the thing is also doing it on the Disney Wish. I think they do the Star Wars Day at Sea, which is a themed day as well. So you want to try and get that. I don't know if that happens every single time there's a cruise on that line, or if it's like periodically or something. But that's a way to do it. So I will have to work my magic on the missus and see if we can kind of book in. Because yes, you fly, I think it's to Nassau, and then which is kind of around the Bahamas. That's where the cruise is. So, you won't be able to fault the weather there. That's a fact. So we'll see what happens. And And hey, if
we should talk about this. We should have like a Making Tracks week away.
Yeah.
We should just record podcasts for the week that we're away and just do it.
I think so.
Hi, this is John Morton from The Empire Strikes Back. I'm Dak Rotha, or Bespin Boba, and you're listening to Fantha Tracks.
London Film and Comic Con is returning to the London Olympia on the 23rd through to the 25th of July. Fantha Tracks will be there in some shape, way or form. Showmasters has just announced a plethora of Star Wars-related guests and autograph signers.
And it comes from all across, really across the saga. You got people from the original trilogy, people from The Mandalorian, from Rogue One, Rise of Skywalker. It's actually a really strong list. And this is just the Star Wars ones. I mean, there's a whole slew of other people coming.
We've got Ming-Na Wen, which I think is probably the headliner for the list, at least anyway. And of course, she was in The Mandalorian, and we're going to hear her voice in The Bad Batch. And of course, we're later see her this year in the Book of Boba Fett. So that's cool, as Fennec Shand. So that's wicked. Natalie Tenner, who her character name escapes me, but she played kind of Purple Twi'lek on, was it episode 6 of season 1 of Mandalorian?
That's right, yeah.
As well as playing Tonks in Harry Potter. Misty Rosas, who is the amazing actress behind Quill and a lot of other smaller kind of characters and stuff, literally in stature.
She was Frog Lady, wasn't she?
Frog Lady,
in season 2? Yeah.
So small in stature, but at least judging from her Instagram, big personality. So she will definitely not be one to skip over if you get a chance to get an autograph and meet her.
Yeah, you've got Omid Abtahi, who was Dr. Pershing from The Mandalorian again. Got Mark Boone Jr. He was the guy that owned the station that Mando went back to when he went off on that mission in episode 6 or chapter 6. That ties in nicely with Natalia.
Exactly. And also he was, I think he was Bobby in Sons of Anarchy. And basically, I think in some respects, kind of played a very similar character in The Mandalorian.
Absolutely. Riz Ahmed, Bodhi Rook from Rogue One. Milton Johns from Empire Strikes Back, and Julian Glover. Milton Johns was the Imperial officer on the carbon platform chamber that comes to Vader to tell him that Luke's landed. And obviously Julian Glover was General Veers. And also, it's Indiana Jones' 40th anniversary, so you've got Karen Allen's there as well. So with Julian Glover, you've got a couple of indie guests. And then Mandeep Dhillon, who was a First Order officer in The Rise of Skywalker, but she's also in Afterlife, Ricky Gervais' show Afterlife. So just as a first batch of guests, it's a really strong start, isn't it?
It's great. And speaking to a few different convention organisers across the UK, there is a real reluctance by some of the booking agents to confirm like an appearance without some kind of form of guarantee, like financial guarantee. Some of these booking agents can't do it because the star is quite expensive to get over. So it's great that they're going ahead with this, and we've got a mixture of British and non-British actors and actresses coming over. So I'm hoping I can get Ming's autograph. I'd be quite happy if I get that one, and maybe even Misty's as well if I can get a chance. Obviously it comes down to how far the credits will stretch and that, because depending on what you get, it can be pretty pricey. It'll be a good weekend, and I suppose also be interesting to see how Showmasters start to deal with these large scale autograph pools and stuff with conscientious awareness of people and social distancing as well.
From what I understand, I'm friends with some of the guys over there, they're going to be conscious of numbers, very conscious of distancing and doing all that correctly and as best they can. We're further out now beyond certain dates that we've got to hit coming out of lockdown, but nevertheless, they want to be as careful as possible because Showmasters is a big company and they want to put on other shows after this. I think they're going to try and do it as carefully as possible. So we'll be covering it. You'll be there as part of the Rebel Legion. Yep. We'll both get a chance to record a Making Tracks whilst we're on the ground.
I would think so. I'm sure we'll have a chance to do a live convention record. That'll be quite fun. Be my first time doing that. So look forward to that.
Yeah.
So all being well, it will be a nice hot summer's day, which actually with Olympia can actually be quite tiring. But hey, there you go. Looking forward to it. Literally cannot wait.
Hey man, it's me, Kevin Smith, Star Wars fan, Fantha Tracks fan.
We've got The Bad Batch arriving today on Disney+. We know that Obi-Wan Kenobi, the series, is moving forward with Ewan McGregor and Hayden Christensen back in the role of Darth Vader. But speaking recently, Matt Lanter has said there's some new Lucasfilm animation going on. I've been a part of some things I can't talk about yet. You'll see Anakin again. I never quite put Anakin down, whether I'm doing a video game or something new for Lucasfilm animation. So he mentions video games, so it could be a video game, but he kind of says it in the past tense. We know Bad Batch is coming. We know when it's set, right after Revenge of the Sith. We know Hayden's back as Vader in Obi-Wan, but that's 10 years on. So my question to you, Mr. Mulcaster, what do you think this project could be? Do you think we're looking at new animation? that's nearer to the era of the Bad Batch, maybe something in between, because you've got live action Obi-Wan 10 years out. What do you think?
I mean, it's great news that he's back and still doing Anakin as well. Because obviously, like you said, a lot of the focus is on Obi-Wan Kenobi and Hayden Christensen at the moment. I think computer game voices is probably not necessarily too far a stretch, really. I think, and also with some of these online games and stuff that Disney have put out, they constantly are adding and refreshing and kind of doing these kind of like new kind of skins and stuff like that for some of the games. So it could be something like that. But yeah, with Lucasfilm Animation, I wonder if there's even scope in the Bad Batch for like a flashback episode. I mean, you kind of got to think that potentially there's got to be some kind of reconcile of Order 66 with the Bad Batch and the fact they weren't part of Order 66 for whatever reason. And I just wonder if even if it's just like we've seen Rex in the Bad Batch and the trailers and that. So I wonder if potentially it could be a flashback to the last time he saw Anakin or something like that. I don't know. If it's a new series, however, I feel like in some respects we're starting to get a little bit cramped in that pre-A New Hope era. And when I say pre-New Hope, I kind of really mean like post Revenge of the Sith, like that first 5 years. And really, if it's Anakin we're talking about, then it's got to be set before Revenge of the Sith. So I don't kind of see much happening beyond like a separate animation around the Clone Wars era. But it doesn't quite work in my mind anyway.
It's a tough one, like you say, because there's such, as characters, and this is kind of part of the construct of the original trilogy and why it works so well, is that Anakin and Darth Vader really are two separate characters until you get to the business end of the original trilogy and Anakin starts to come more to the fore and realises certain things and his personal drive takes over the Vader persona almost. The blinkers are off and he can see that he's been lied to, and so you get to the tough end of Jedi. But as a character, physically, sure, you can get Hayden in the Vader suit. That's easy. Most of the time he's got the helmet on. So you would imagine that if it's not being voiced by James Earl Jones, which I would imagine it probably won't be at this juncture, there's certainly other voice performers who can do a very passable Vader.
Yeah.
I don't think that's Hayden. Some actors can really shout. Harrison Ford can shout.
Yes.
And he sounds like he means it and he sounds angry. Ewan can shout. Hayden cannot shout. In those scenes in Sith, it's like listen to Brock Lesnar. It just didn't work. So he hasn't got that imposing voice. Maybe as the years have progressed, he's developed that. I don't know. It is nearly 20 years ago. He was just a kid, really, when he did Revenge of the Sith and Attack of the Clones, especially Sith. But nevertheless, and your voice deepens as you get older. It just does. But that being said, you've got to think Matt Lanter being Anakin, Hayden Christensen being Anakin, we're kind of paralleling the two now. They are pre-Mustafar Lava Pit Anakin. The only time I can see either of them really coming in is, as you just said, in flashbacks, which is perfectly valid for both. For Matt, it makes no difference when they do it. He's a vocal performer in this instance. For Hayden, lucky buggers, just weathered really well. And I don't think it would take an like Hayden, like Ewan has. So I don't think it would take ILM much work to take another 10 years off both those guys and make it look like, wow, did they film this back in 2003 when they did Sith? And this is a risk. This is a risk with Boba Fett in that you go too deep into the character and he loses his mystery and allure. It's what Star Trek did with the Borg, is they defang them by humanising them too much. With Vader, you can get too far down the tragic line in the sense of it is tragic what happened to Anakin, but Anakin became Darth Vader, and all those Anakin thoughts were very much pushed to the back of his head. The Vader comic at the moment, the Greg Pak comic, is doing a great job of whittling those out because we're sort of post-Empire now. We're on the run towards Jedi when he really does have the turn back to some semblance of good, inverted commas, or redemption. At this point, 10 years before A New Hope, he is full on, ninja Darth Vader. And so even when he's taking the helmet off and he's in the chamber, and he's having his arms removed and replaced like you saw in Rogue One, and just different than you see in the comic where he's sort of taking battle droid arms to get himself through fights and all sorts of cool stuff. Oh, wow. I don't see a huge amount of scope for a humanised Anakin, because it's always Anakin.
Yeah.
I think you're right. I think it's flashbacks.
Yeah. I mean, you are, and also you're right as well in respects that I think we need to start seeing Darth Vader, as in the kind of Darth Vader that we saw at the end of Rogue One.
Yeah.
If we're going to start to explore Darth Vader, I think we need to start to really let him bury the past for, a good 10, 15 years. And then, like you say, it can resurface, obviously, when he starts to kind of interact with Luke. But I think it's not doing, I think, the legacy of Darth Vader much good. Basically, this bad breakup hanging around him for too long with respect to Padme, and it does feel like most comics, when they focus on Darth Vader, there's always flashback panels with Padme. That's the well that they like to go to. And it's cool, but then actually you kind of look at it and kind of go, yeah, but Darth Vader's meant to be badass, and at least for a portion of time you think that he's probably moved past it when he falls down again, so to speak. But you kind of want to get him back to his pinnacle. I mean, of course, speaking with my tongue in my cheek, maybe Matt Lanter's doing the voice of Anakin in those flashback scenes with Kenobi, and he's overdubbing Hayden Christensen, for all we know.
Hey, you never know.
Yeah.
I can see Lucasfilm moving forward where you have a live-action Ahsoka, i.e. Rosario Dawson, and an animated Ahsoka being Ashley Eckstein, and you can have, like, you've got Guy Henry is live action Tarkin, Stephen Stanton is vocal, like he is in the the Bad Batch trailer, he's the voice of Tarkin. Now you've got Matt and you've got Hayden. There's various other actors who share the role. I think that's kind of cool. I like that.
I do as well, because I think in some respects it's kind of paying homage to the legacy of the Clone Wars and Rebels and all the work that these voice actors have really done. And I think in some respects propped up Star Wars.
Yeah.
For such a long period of time. Before, the sequel trilogy came out, it was only the animation like the Clone Wars that we had. That was our Star Wars. So I think it's good. And also that's the thing, it's the voice casting for some of these characters is so bang on, like with Steve Stanton and Matt Lanter, that actually
James Alder Taylor,
it's just not jarring going between the two. But if an average person could quite happily just probably watch Kenobi with Christensen and then watch, I don't know, Bad Batch with a flashback episode with Matt Lanter and probably totally buy that is just exactly the same character vocally as well. So I hope actually whatever it is something cool, because Matt Lanter's a great guy, and I hope that actually we get to see it sooner rather than later.
Fingers crossed, fingers crossed. One other thing that strikes me before we come out of this segment, you've just said something that really made me think about how, we've got the voice actor and we've got the live action actor. I think now that we have live action Star Wars, what will probably happen is more like we've had with Ming-Na Wen, in that Ming-Na Wen is Fennec Shand. And it works. You can't really compare it to Katie Sackhoff because she was a live action actress coming into a vocal role, and now she's taken that forward with Bo-Katan. I think now you will probably find more often than not, if you've got the actor playing them in live action, they'll probably play them in animation going forward. That's my gut feeling. So this is a nice overhang from, like you just said, that period of Star Wars where the animation really kept it in people's minds and kept it with us. Rebels led us up to The Force Awakens. Clone Wars got us through Revenge of the Sith and kept us going through that period of Star Wars when it was still massively popular, but live action wasn't on the horizon. So I think that's probably how they'll play it. But yeah, totally agree. Whatever this is, whatever Matt's doing, be it a game or an animation or what, I hope it comes soon. I'm looking forward to it.
For everything in one location, daily news, reviews, interviews, podcasts, video, and social media feeds, bookmark FanthaTracks.com for Star Wars news 24/7, 365.
We've got another listener's question. That's the bit. I was waiting for the fanfare and the trumpets and stuff and firework parades and all that stuff. Exactly. We've got a question. It's come from a guy called Paul in Australia, and I think this is one of the coolest questions we've had in a long time, so I shall read it out. Hi, guys. I've been listening to your podcast from the beginning, and I look forward to every new episode. That's nice to hear. My question has to do with the new Obi-Wan series. Luke's line in Empire that Dagobah seems familiar makes me wonder whether at some point could Obi-Wan have taken a very young Luke to Dagobah for Yoda to see, and Luke was too young to remember. I know he's supposed to be 10 years old in the series, but could this happen possibly with Luke having had these memories removed? Just a thought. I'm curious what you think. Why does Luke find Dagobah familiar? Keep up the great work. Paul from Australia. So thank you, Paul. That's a cracking question. We'll get straight into it. What do you think? Do you think Luke could have been to Dagobah? Do you think he could have met Yoda in the past? Do you think he's either forgotten it because he was just a kid? Not that you'd forget that. What do you think, Mark?
There's something familiar about this place. I feel like what? Like I'm being watched. That's my little recreation of Luke on Dagobah with Yoda. Now, interestingly, Luke says it feels like it's something out of a dream. Part of me thinks, could this be like a Force vision? It's something that is picked up on in the sequel trilogy, because Rey has these dreams of an island surrounded by water. And we know that Rey's never been off of like Jakku, so she's not really seen anything outside of sand. And similarly, Luke on Tatooine and has not seen anything other than sand. I just wonder if it's one of two things. It's either some kind of Force vision dream that he's had subconsciously, or if it's just one of those weird deja vu things. Because it's Star Wars, I'm thinking it's more likely to be something related to the Force. So it could just be like maybe Yoda's, as we know, as Yoda says in The Empire Strikes Back, that he's been watching Luke. And so I wonder if, again, there's some kind of slight Force connection when, Yoda's actively seeking out Luke and is looking for Luke, but maybe, again, Luke's slightly aware of Yoda's environment, again, maybe on a subconscious level. So it could be that. I mean, again, from a story point of view, it would be really interesting, and I'd wonder how they could do it, because ultimately, Obi-Wan Kenobi, as far as we know, goes straight from Polis Massa and goes straight to Tatooine, at least in Revenge of the Sith. It doesn't feel like he's going to go to Dagobah then when Luke's an infant. Basically, what we're talking about is literally kidnapping. He would have to, for some reason or justification, take Luke away from Owen and Beru and then get him off planet. So depending upon, unless like Owen and Beru are incapacitated for a prolonged period of time, I don't quite see how Obi-Wan could take Luke off planet away from his aunt and uncle. That's my thinking. So my theory is that it's more a Force thing potentially than anything else.
Yeah, I tend to agree. Actually, I think Leia saying about how she remembers them in Jedi. Remember my mother, kind but sad, and all that. And we know she was with Padme for minutes. There's obviously some connection there. I think maybe this could be the same because, like you say, Luke, as far as we know, and this is all a hypothesis, as far as we know, outside of Polis Massa and travelling to Tatooine, he's never left Tatooine. He's grown up just a kid on a moisture farm in the middle of nowhere, keeping the Tusken Raiders at bay and living that very simple life, whereas Leia's raised essentially in opulence on beautiful Alderaan. Yeah, I think it could very likely be that, like you just said, like Rey knowing about the island and Kylo reading her memories and all that sort of stuff. I think it's more likely to play into that. But as a visual for the show, as a sequence for the show, my head tells me it would play more to what you've just said about, well, how do you get Owen and Beru out of the way to justify Luke going with Yoda to Dagobah? If you look at, here we go, galaxy map. If you look at the galaxy map, it's not a massive distance clockwise around the outer rim from Tatooine to Dagobah. You got to know where Dagobah is. Ben would. We know that Yoda was going there straight after Sith and that the two kids were going their separate ways, and Leia's literally couldn't be further away. So they could play it either way, but it's such an evocative line when and Paul's done a great job of picking that line out, when you look at it, and he's like, I know this place. Why is this familiar? Yeah. And geographically, why would any of that be familiar to a kid from a desert?
Absolutely,
essentially. Yeah. So it is either like you say, Rey, I've never seen so much green, but she knows the island. But she's never been to the island, and she's essentially the next chosen one, isn't she? After Anakin. If you want to look at the two trilogies, Luke is almost in this conversation. You've got Rey. This is the awakening, and of course we learn by Rise of Skywalker it's not just Rey. It's Kylo as well to a degree because they're the dyad. Yeah. So clearly he's coming into his own as well as Rey. Kylo is like Leia. Rey is like Luke. Rey's been raised on a desert planet with nothing. Kylo was the son of a princess. Leia was the daughter of essentially the king and queen of Alderaan, if you want to put it in those. They're not, but you know what I'm saying. They're like high society, opulence, everything you could want, every opportunity, every training you could dream of, any avenue that she wanted to go down, she would have been encouraged to go down. If Leia had wanted to be the best basket weaver in Alderaan, they would have backed her to the hilt. They wanted her to be the best she could be and be happy. And Leia was the kind of character that did what she did and got into politics and became one of the youngest senators and all that sort of stuff. But Leia had every advantage. And then she has that ripped away from her. I think Luke was the link between those two chosen ones, if you like, and Leia similarly. And I think both of them did almost have these Force visions. Leia could sense Luke hanging off the weather vane in Empire. She remembered her mother. Luke, why is this place familiar? But I think as a visual, I still think they're going to fly off to Dagobah in General Grievous's ship.
That's your prediction. Okay, would it be more conceivably easier, although it doesn't really answer the question, but to bring Yoda to Luke rather than Luke to Yoda?
Well, yeah, but there is that cutscene from Sith, isn't there, when he lands in the little pod that you saw him take off from Kashyyyk in, and you see the doors open, he sort of tentatively looks outside, almost like, what have I let myself into here, sort of thing. And we've talked about Yoda on Dagobah before on the show. I always feel like it's almost a penance. He was the top guy in the Jedi Order at that time, and it all happened around him, and he didn't see it coming, and it's kind of on his watch, and so he goes to meditate and get out the way and keep his head down. And the Jedi bide their time between A New Hope and essentially Jedi, just the way that Palpatine takes his time between. It's further back than that, but from, say, Phantom Menace to Revenge of the Sith, 13 years. Both sides are very patient in their own ways. The difference being is that Palpatine had all the power and Yoda and Ben had none, really. Yeah. They were just waiting for the right moment. To see Yoda come to Tatooine would be quite interesting, but then it doesn't explain, like you say, it doesn't explain why Luke would remember Dagobah. But hey, anything can happen now. We've seen so many new Force powers introduced in the sequel trilogy. They had to come from somewhere. They had to start at some point. Be cool to see Yoda on Tatooine. I'd kind of like to see that.
Be quite fun, wouldn't it? Especially if he gets out of his little pod and it's like, sand I hate. Yes.
You just like doing a Yoda impression.
I do now, yeah. Now what somebody's kind of commented about, actually, it's not that bad. Yes.
Paul, I don't know if that answers your question. We probably think it's one of two things. It's either Luke was taken there by Obi-Wan or by Ben. One of the questions is, is he too young to remember? I don't know. I think he'd remember if you were 10. Most kids would remember that, especially if it's your first, largely only time off the planet. Yeah. So I think Luke would remember that. Having his memories removed, that's quite... That's invasive, isn't it? It's very invasive.
Quite dark, yeah.
It is, but there's so much at stake. The story and the plot could kind of justify that, but it is kind of dark because everyone's being played to a degree. And I know he's only a kid, but he's he's Force sensitive, I guess you would say at this point. Maybe he's not. Anakin was like quite overt, but nobody knew what it was about him until Qui-Gon turned up. Just the midichlorian count was like, holy doo-doo, what's this? But with Luke, it wasn't quite that, because I think Luke's kind of a bit sort of clumsy by nature, isn't he? And he's a bit awkward, isn't he, Luke? He's not the most graceful guy at that time. Certainly by A New Hope, he's not. He grows into himself a little bit. Leia was almost like the total package from the very beginning.
Why would they need to wipe Luke's memory? Obviously, to shield the fact that he's met Yoda. But what would facilitate? What would be the necessity to take Luke to Yoda? Unless, of course, Luke's not developing in the way that maybe Ben and Yoda are hoping.
Yeah.
So
exactly that.
He could be like some kind of Damien demon child or something, who maybe he's slipping down the dark side, and maybe Obi-Wan's like, got to try and stop this, but it's beyond my reckoning. I've got to take him to Yoda.
Here's the thought then. A 10-year-old Luke is essentially Anakin in the Phantom Menace, isn't he?
Yes, precisely.
And they've been down this path before, and so they might look at him and go, I don't know who they're going to cast, if there is a young Luke in Obi-Wan, but Yoda and especially Ben will probably look at that scenario and go,
we've seen this.
Yeah, we've seen this before. Ben especially, because Qui-Gon's gone at that point, and Anakin, you're thinking it's all there for him. He's on the capital planet of the galaxy. He's in the Jedi Temple. He's got every teacher, every opportunity. It's a bit like Leia on Alderaan. Everything's stacked up for him to do well, but he gets distracted by Padme, and his own inner thoughts of losing his mother, or being at that point still being on Tatooine and being away from her, which of course he feared. Luke hasn't quite got that, but we don't know how close he's going to be to Beru in the show.
Exactly.
We don't know what the relationship's going to be like there, so that could be an element. I think it could be the point of Yoda just looks at Ben and goes, he says it in Empire. He's not ready.
Yeah.
We kind of think, he's playing the crazy old fool just to keep Luke off balance because he wants to see how Luke's going to react to it. And Luke does react to it with some frustration. Maybe this is why. Maybe he's like, this is all very familiar to me. I've been here before and I don't know why. I don't like this because I know I've been here, but I've never left Tatooine before. So I think that the memories being removed thing, there could be something in that.
There could be something in that. I mean, could you imagine if they start to play around with this idea that Luke, as a young innocent, is dabbling in the dark side? I wonder what that kind of effect and then later perception that has on everything that we see Luke do, because it brings back the whole subversiveness and that whole subversive argument kind of behind The Last Jedi. It could really profoundly change how we view the character from now on.
Massively. I was saying about Last Jedi a couple of weeks ago, not my favourite Star Wars film, kind of struggled with it,
grown
but
on
I do appreciate it. yeah, I kind of appreciate it much more now because looking at different story elements as other things unfold. I mean, this is just a spitballing, but if anything like what we've just said came to pass, and Luke ever found out about it, if Luke has a very frank and full and honest conversation with Yoda, I don't know how it works if you're both Force ghosts. Does Yoda still have to tell him? Does Luke kind of just know? The Force is a thing. It's almost like a living entity. And if you're a Force ghost, then you're part of that entity. So all of a sudden, I would imagine most of the answers are evident. And Luke would know, yeah, I did go to Dagobah. Those two sons of bitches wiped my mind. Now I'm even more certain that I was right. Just because that truth works for Luke doesn't mean that truth works for Rey.
Exactly.
Rey's a different person entirely. So I think what Luke says to Rey in Rise of Skywalker is right for Rey. And Luke's not there to serve himself in Rise of Skywalker as a Force ghost. He's there to instruct and give his best opinion to Rey. It can only ever be, you've got to do what you feel is right, which is what Ben says to Luke in Star Wars. So, yeah, you're right. I think it could really make you look, it won't change anything, but I think it would make you look at Luke's decisions from a very different angle. But I will say it's a very Star Wars thing in that other stories come along and other stories unfold, and it makes you look at things differently. And it feels like the creators have gone, that's what we meant all along. It isn't. It's Star Wars, and you can almost do a Leland Chi and make it fit. And this is kind of one of them where it's like, well, now I get why Luke did that on Acto, because he learnt this about this thing that happened to him when he was 10 years old, and it's kind of been in his head all that time, and it could all play into unfolding these later events quite nicely.
Speaking of Obi-Wan Kenobi, Ewan McGregor had a interview and a chat with a Hollywood Reporter, and one of the things he kind of talks about, obviously, is how he's really enthusiastic about returning to the role and how he's got a different perspective based on the fact he's now older than when he was when he did the prequel trilogy. But one thing that was interesting to me, and I want to get your take on this, the interviewer basically asked, is there a potential for a Luke Skywalker appearance? Very topical based on the conversation we've just had. And in the text, basically, it reads, he flashes that famous Ewan McGregor grin and says, that's very possible. I don't know. So my question now to you, Mark, is it sounds like there is a strong possibility that we could see Luke in Kenobi. Do you want to see Luke as a younger character? I mean, I know we kind of saw him in Star Wars Rebels, but it was very silhouetted, and it was meant to, I think it was meant to be very vague and just give us like a jumping off point. But, this would very much kind of nail down the characterization of Luke Skywalker as a young child. So is that something that you're excited to see or you want to see?
Going back to what we just talked about again, it's that hypothesis we just spat out about Dagobah, like you say, plays into this. And I mean, I think we're only getting 6 episodes, 45 minutes an episode. Yeah. So there's, you would imagine, quite a lot to pack in. And I hope the style and the editing and the pace of it is more in keeping with the original trilogy than the prequel trilogy, because the prequels, and I love the prequels, but there was so much to fit in. It was bang, 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 bang. And I'm hoping that this is a bit more paced like A New Hope, which is quite measured. Like The Mandalorian, I've got to say, Mando has more of an OT edit, to my mind, than a prequel trilogy edit. It's much more genteel. It's not chasing its tail. And Mando doesn't matter what episode length it is because it's a streamer. So if it's half an hour or 45 minutes, don't matter. Whatever fits the story. With Luke, part of me would love to see it. Part of me also knows that whatever kid they cast, I'm not going to look at them and think, that's a young Mark Hamill. Unless they absolutely look out and Mark's got like a nephew somewhere that just looks like he did when he was 10, which I doubt. So it's got to feel right. If they used Luke, I'd want it to be like the most, not a cameo, but I don't want him to be in all 6 episodes. You have a sequence of each episode where Luke's sort of passing the homestead at some point, just sees Luke play with his Skyhopper or flying around in his little land speeder or whatever. Fine. Maybe that one episode when they go to Dagobah, like we just talked about, which I think was a great question. I think I've got it in my head now. I think it would work really well. I don't want it to be the Luke and Ben show.
Yeah.
Because to me, when Luke's talking about Ben to Owen and to Beru, it's just a crazy old man. I think he died, and all that sort of stuff. They'd just be very evasive about him. So he is very much that sort of shadow on the ridge sort of character. I don't think Ben's like knocking on the door asking for a cup of sugar or anything, It's all at a distance. But Luke's naturally inquisitive as a character. He'd be the Boo Radley, wouldn't he? He'd be like, To Kill a Mockingbird. He'd be the guy in the old house at the end of the street.
That everybody's scared
crazy
of,
old Ben. Yeah, that's how it would be more to me. I'd like to see a young Luke because why not? I want to see a young Leia at some juncture, and maybe this is where we see it. Because, again, we've said it before, and we'll say it over the next year, I'm certain, before the show comes. Old gut feeling is that Ben hardly ever left Tatooine. The more into it we get, the more I think, he probably did. He's part of something way bigger, and there's got to be communication. That's why I think Bail Organa's going to be in this. He's definitely going to be in Andor. I think he's going to be in this as well. And I just think you'll realise there's more connective tissue than you might have initially perceived. What do you think?
I'm kind of with you. I don't want there to be a heavy use of Luke, because I think Luke's introduction in A New Hope is pretty good. But I think there's scope for potentially putting the farmstead under some kind of danger from a Tusken Raider attack. Ben just helps out. Potentially Luke views him. I wonder if it's that kind of disconnected view. I mean, I don't think we're likely to get a "Hi, I'm Obi-Wan Kenobi, who are you?" kind of introduction. I think it could be something like a fleeting vision, or something's passing in the distance, and that's all Luke sees, or potentially, I don't know, Luke's trying to tame or ride a bantha or a dewback and gets into trouble, and Ben has to use a force just to kind of lift him up from being dropped over the edge of Beggar's Canyon or something like that. Something that's going to force Ben to have to use his force powers and kind of reveal himself, but done in a way that actually Luke's not necessarily aware of enough to kind of then kind of put the two and two together. Ultimately, at the end of the day, Luke doesn't know about the Force until A New Hope, and they have to respect that. I think there's some stuff that in the continuity they have to respect, and so obviously, like I said, you can dance around it and you can be a little bit clever and you can dangle it in front of us, and I think that's fine. But if it's too on the nose and it starts to really erode away those introductions that we had to the characters in A New Hope, then I think it's possibly doing a disservice to those characters.
Yeah, Luke has never even heard of the Force, has he? And it's a bit like Phantom. It's going back to a previous conversation about a 10-year-old Luke goes to Dagobah and they just see 10-year-old Anakin from Phantom Menace, and just think this is a bad path. Anakin was the best human pilot doing a pod racer. He could fix things. He was intuitive, and they didn't know why. And then Qui-Gon's like, "Oh, he's using the Force."
Exactly. Yeah.
Like the most matter-of-fact thing ever is using the Force. And maybe Luke has got certain skills. No, socially he's not the best. That Tosche Station crew is the nerdy little kid in the corn rummers, isn't he? All his friends are going off and doing other stuff. Owen's not a finish the day and go down the cantina for a quick flame out kind of guy, is he? So he's probably got no social skills. So Luke's got to go to school, so he's mixing with other kids at school. So there's got to be that, you would imagine. Yeah. And I'm saying that just a gut feeling, but also you saw that lovely scene on Navarro in The Mandalorian with the kids at school. So you're thinking, well, mate, Luke's got to learn a bit about life, probably very Tatooine-centric education. There's probably not a galactic standard
curriculum.
Education. Yeah. Exact curriculum, that's the word. There's probably not that, but, he's learning about what he needs to know to survive in this environment.
If we introduce a young Luke, that gives us the opportunity to kind of introduce a young Cammy, introduce a young Biggs, and maybe that whole Anchorhead scene can just kind of be reworked into like a schoolyard bullying kind of scene where like got Fixer and Matt who are all basically just calling Luke wormy and just kind of taking the piss and all that. That could be quite interesting, and that would work really well.
What, physically recreate Tosche Station to do a scene like that?
No, literally just kind of like take that the themes of that story, or that part of the story. They could actually almost take the essence of that Anchorhead scene that we don't actually see in the film, and then maybe rework it so actually it could work in Kenobi for Luke in a different way. So we kind of still get that kind of vibe that Luke is Luke even back then. I don't know. It's just a kind of crazy old man's thought, really.
No, I like that though. But do you think this show will have more of a Clone Wars era vibe or a prequel trilogy vibe, or do you think it really will feel more like the original trilogy, or do you think it'll just be its own thing?
I think it'll be its own thing, and I think it will be kind of slap bang in the middle. So I think you're going to hear references to the Galactic Empire increasing their domination over the Outer Rim, and also at the same time playing on the plight of people who are so disconnected from Coruscant. If we're going to start to talk about galactic politics, I think it has to kind of cover both parts. I mean, Tatooine in itself, even in the prequels, felt like Tatooine. It didn't feel like it was kind of hugely connected to the kind of the opulence of Naboo and Coruscant. So it will probably feel like that, but there's probably going to be, and in fact, I think we quite easily guess that there's going to be stormtroopers and that maybe walking around. I think it's kind of leaning away from the prequels into that original trilogy kind of era, because it's kind of really going to set up, I guess, everything else going on from then.
Let's just say it's got a special edition vibe.
I'm so down with a CG Jabba the Hutt running around. Slithering around.
leaving a slime trail behind
exactly,
him.
Yeah. No, there's a 4. So with that horrible, slimy and slightly sandy kind of image in our minds, I think it's time to wrap this one up. I'd like to say a big thank you to Paul again for sending that listener's question. That was quite a good one, and actually you can see it's kind of basically eaten up most of our time. So Mark, if any other listeners have a question, how can they get in touch and send it over to us?
Well, the bar's been raised now. The last couple of weeks we've had really good questions come in, and that's as good as we've had from anybody. So keep sending those questions in. We will, as you've seen, chew over anything. But if you want to be a part of the action and stay updated on all the latest Star Wars news, visit fanthatracks.com or check out the free Fantha Tracks app through the App Store to follow us on your mobile device. You can reach out to us and send in your listeners' questions by emailing radio@fanthatracks.com. Do what Paul did, do what other listeners have done, get your questions in and we will talk about it. Comment, like and share on any of our social media feeds @FanthaTracks, and be sure to subscribe, leave a review, preferably a 5-star one, on Amazon Music, Audible, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or your podcatcher or smart speaker of choice. And as always, thanks to James Semple for composing the Fantha Tracks intro, Adam O'Brien for our Making Tracks opening music, and Mark Daniel and Vanessa Marshall for our voiceovers. Episode 88, and I'm going to take a breath now.
Fantastic. Mark, you take care. Everybody else, you stay safe. Have a very happy May the 4th, or Star Wars Day, or whatever you want to call it. Go and visit fanthatracks.com and check out all the amazing offers we're going to have posted throughout the day. And of course, stay safe, get vaccinated, wear a mask, and may the Force be with you.
Coming up next on Fantha Tracks Radio, it's another episode of Making Tracks.